Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey here once again with another video on The Flash Season 9. So as we should all know by now, or at least most of us at least, The Flash is back to filming for its final season for the final time with the commencement of episode 1 filming like last week roughly, with us also getting some first look set photos the other day, which did showcase a new but familiar at the same time character. Of course, a link to that video will be in the description down below if you've not seen it yet. But the tease we got at the end of last season to lead us into this final season, or this final ninth season, involved a mysterious glowing blue crystal in a lab in the future in the year 2049, which Eric Wallace, the showrunner of The Flash, has said that fans of the comics know where that is heading. And really the only solution that most people will have is that it must be leading towards a villain I've personally wanted since the end of season 1, that of course being Cobalt Blue. Now, a surprisingly good amount of people either tagged me in this or just sent me the link to this article from Screen Rant, not Screen Rant, which I'm usually not the biggest fan of Screen Rant because of just how they go about most of their articles. But I thought it was an interesting discussion for a video at least, and of course, I am interested to hear what you guys think of it as well. But of course, throughout the video, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below your various thoughts on this, your opinions, how you would go about it, which one's your favorite. All that stuff, always curious. And of course, if you're going to enjoy the video, want to show your support and everything like that, looking forward to this final season of The Flash, why not drop a like on the video to do all that. So this article was from Charles Raymond from Screen Rant, and the article is entitled The Flash, Every Theory on How Cobalt Blue Joins in Season 9. So yeah, you know where this is going. Different theories, I give my thoughts, you give your thoughts. Good equation for a discussion video. But yeah, we will go over them and then rank them from least likely to most likely in my opinion, or least favorite to most favorite is probably the best way to put it, but that's also, includes the likelihood of it as well. I just think that's the best way to go about it, and I'm not going to read out everything they say in the article, at least from every single point. I'm just going to sum up their points for the most part, otherwise we'll be here for 2 hours. But yeah, let's jump into it. So the first theory is Cobalt Blue is Barry Allen's secret brother. So they start by talking about the comic story and that the show could easily go down that route. Whereas I said before, Cobalt Blue or Malcolm Thawne, as it is in the comics, is Barry Allen's secret brother that was separated at birth at the hospital, which leads Malcolm to having quite the rotten life compared to Barry's nice childhood, with him eventually coming across the blue flame talisman that leads to him becoming Cobalt Blue and setting his eyes on Barry's loved ones. Of course, taking this route and revealing that Barry has a secret brother would be a risky move for this series, which is one reason why The Flash may avoid Cobalt Blue's comic book origin. Plus, there's the notion that the show has already done a version of this story, that being Savitar, the whole Barry Allen time remnant that was abandoned and forgotten by Team Flash. It does have some strong similarities to the Cobalt Blue storyline if they, are going to be faithful or adapted completely like they did, like it was in the comics. So yeah, it'd feel like a retread, which I've brought it before. Like if you go down that route, it could come across very similar, especially with the whole blue color as well, because Savitar was associated with blue and white and stuff like that. But yeah, we've discussed this theory before, the whole secret brother thing, and I think maybe if it was if you use Eddie Thawne, then no. If it's a completely different character, then maybe. But it's at that point, it's like we're in season 9. Is it too late to do a storyline like this? But next theory is Cobalt Blue is Eddie Thawne from an alternate timeline. It's long been speculated that making Cobalt Blue Barry's brother would be narratively challenging. The Flash may retcon Eddie Thawne into Cobalt Blue instead. Going in that direction would make sense to a certain degree, especially since a fundamental part of the comic character is his connection to Eobard Thawne. Like Malcolm Thawne in the DC Universe, Eddie Thawne is a confirmed ancestor of the Reverse Flash. It's possible that Eddie truly is the Arrowverse's Malcolm Thawne, albeit with a different first name. If so, it could be that while Earth Prime's Eddie avoided becoming his comic counterpart, the Eddie of a different timeline didn't. This would allow the Flash to make Eddie into Cobalt Blue without ruining the Season 1 character's heroic ending. So this is probably the one where it's easy to do because you're also not having to tread on anything that's come before, like all the Season 1 stuff and any of the characters' feelings or main characters' feelings towards the Eddie that they knew and in some cases loved. But there's also the issue of a personal connection. That's sometimes been an issue with not just a Flash villain, but just villains in comic book media in general. Sometimes they're just a villain for the sake of being a villain, and there's no real personal connection or a reason as to what they're doing or why they're doing it. So that could be an issue with having an Eddie Thawne from an alternate timeline. Why is he coming to this one and doing what he's doing? That would be a big question mark on it. The next theory is Cobalt Blue is a second Thawne Ancestor from the future. As we saw in the cliffhanger for Season 8, the show's interpretation of Cobalt Blue may not be Eddie Thawne or Barry's secret brother. Instead, the Flash could introduce a new Thawne Ancestor from a different point in the timeline. Specifically, he could be a character tied to Bart and Nora's Arrowverse stories. In fact, that may have been what the Flash was hinting at when it revealed that the blue crystal is in a lab in 2049. Whoever Cobalt Blue is, he may be an enemy of either a middle-aged Barry Allen or his adult children. If he becomes the new host of the Negative Speed Force, as the finale implied would happen, Malcolm Thawne could travel back to the past and challenge the Scarlet Speedster in his prime. So this isn't a bad idea in regards to the whole thing being from the future, just due to the fact that the crystal is in the future, and they made sure that we knew it was in 2049. Like, it had that on the calendar. That was the first thing that we see when it cuts to that sort of like cliffhanger at the end of the season. Now, the big question is like whether that's where it's like its origins lie in regards to the development of this villain that harnesses the crystal, or whether that's just where it is and that's like maybe like halfway through the story or whatever it is, because that's in the future. That can happen at any point in this story. So maybe the story starts, there's 5 episodes or something, and then the crystal is taken to the future or something like that. And then that's where we pick up from the end of last season in regards to that shot. And then someone steals it from there or retrieves it, whatever it might be. So the villain being associated with stuff in the future isn't like a bad idea at all, because that's what it seems like the finale is setting up in some way. Now, it being a second Thawne Ancestor creates question marks about like, well, who's this the answer? Like, who's this the son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter of, or niece or nephew? Is it of Eddie? Did Eddie have any brothers or sisters? I don't know. Is it the son of like one of his cousins? If so, like, what's the motivation there to go after the Flash? Like, oh, I'm gonna avenge my mum or dad's cousin. Like, it seems weird if that's the case, but you never know. I think the fact it's in the future means, you know, you have to think that it's got like the villain's going to be associated with the future in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through time travel or just that that's where they're from. The second last theory is the season 1 Singularity transformed Eddie into Cobalt Blue. Another theory about Cobalt Blue explains that Eddie Thawne actually survived the events of the season 1 finale. After Eddie's death, his corpse was sucked into the Singularity, similar to how Deathstorm turned out to be a previously unseen consequence of the Singularity. The Flash could do the same with Eddie and reveal that the energy from the black hole transformed and revived his body, thus giving him new abilities and the means to become Cobalt Blue. As for where he's been all these years, it could be that he's just been lost in space or in the time stream, or, you know, located elsewhere, you know, fighting to make his way back. If what happened altered his personality, Eddie could turn into a fully fledged villain. The fact that his sacrifice did very little to end the threat posed by Reverse Flash could also help push him down a dark path. Now, we've talked about this, like how Eddie could come back, and he thought, you know, he could come back to this timeline of Earth Prime in the present day and see that he was not praised as a hero. Like, all Eddie got really was a little plaque in the CCPD. And of course, when you become an officer, you're not expecting to get festivals and parades named after yourself like the Flash did. But we know that Eddie was really the one that saved the day, but Barry got all the credit for it. He got all the credit for it, and really Eddie was forgotten. There's also the big fact that Barry became Mr. Steal Your Girl and took Iris as well, and now they're married, and who knows, this season they could even make it that Iris is pregnant. So we even get to the point where if Eddie comes back, Iris could be pregnant. And it's like, wow. So not only did I die and no one really remembers me, but also you married my girlfriend who I was going to marry, and now you're having a kid. You could argue that Eddie sees that Barry has stolen his life for the most part, and that his life is just pretty much forgotten. That would be a pretty sad thing to happen as well, and you could understand the emotional drive there that might push Eddie into doing something bad and being truly villainous. I think it really works if that's the way they go down. The big work that they have to do is explaining how he survived and why he's been gone for so long. You know, now they could just do something similar to Deathstorm. You know, Deathstorm took a while to travel, but that's a bit different because it was a space-based thing anyway. With Eddie, I think they have to like displace him in time, and maybe he had to figure out how to get back or whatever it might be. Maybe he's lost in the future. Maybe he gets stuck in like, I don't know, maybe it is like 2044 or something, but doesn't want to interact with that Barry there. He wants to interact with something else. But then at that point, he would already known that Barry and Iris get together. So he has to be displaced elsewhere where he doesn't really know, I think. So that's a big hurdle that they have to jump over and figure out. And the final theory that they do have is Arrowverse reversed Eddie Death's death with time travel. The Flash Season 8 played with the idea of Nora and Bart potentially changing the past when they went back to 2014. Additional visits to an earlier point in Central City's history, whether it be with them or a different time traveler, could result in Eddie's death being undone. Perhaps in the interest of stopping Season 1's Reverse Flash from being erased, a character could save Eddie and set his Cobalt Blue story in motion. Being taken out of the timeline and then realising that Barry married Iris instead of him could be what the show needs to give the character a proper villain arc. That could work well for the show, as jealousy over Barry's happiness and is integral to who Cobalt Blue is as a character. By leaning in this direction, the Flash can ensure that it does justice to the DC Comics villain in Season 9. I'm not even going to give my thoughts on this. I'm just going to jump into the rankings because I'll give my thoughts there because it's pretty simple, my thoughts on this one. So yeah, I'm going to rank these from least likely to most likely. Obviously, there's 5. So yeah, obviously, if you want to leave your rankings from least likely to most likely in the comments, you can, or you can just leave the one that you want the most. That might be the easiest one to do, but I'm very curious to hear what you guys think and which one you would want the most as well. But the one I think is least likely is Cobalt Blue is Barry's secret brother. It's just way too soap opera-y for a final season. Like, you could do it in like a season 3 or 4 or something like that. I mean, they did it really with Savitar. Like, I'm your twin brother, sort of, technically. It's just, I know comics are a soap opera pretty much, and also pretty much comic book television is soap opera because it's developed from the comic books as well. Like, like, oh my god, a returning character we thought was dead. Dun, dun, dun. It's a soap opera pretty much. I don't know why it's a criticism, because that's what they have always been for the most part in the comics as well. But it's too soap opera, and I don't think there's enough episodes in this final season to really deal with that. And say that's always been a thing since Barry was born. I think it's best to just steer clear of this being a thing. So least likely in regards to what I want, and also just the logic around it as well. Next up, time travel erasing the death. That's why I didn't bother giving my thoughts on that final one, just because it's pretty simple. It's lazy, in my opinion. I think it's lazy. Time travel, we can just... It's lazy. It's lazy and so uninteresting and boring as well. That's all I have to say. It's lazy. The third, most likely, I guess, Cobalt Blue is a second Thawne Ancestor from the future. Now, as I said before, this is supported by the fact that the crystal was in the year 2049. I was in the future in the year 2049, might I say. But I'll bring it up again. Did Eddie have siblings? Did he have a brother? Did he have a sister? I mean, we know he didn't have kids, and like, as I said before, we don't know if like a distant son or daughter of one of his random cousins would be driven to avenge him. But you never know. Maybe like they really liked him, even though they might not have met him. Well, they wouldn't have met him probably. So I don't know. It's just better than the previous two. The second most likely, or the one I like the most in second place, Cobalt Blue is Eddie Thawne from an alternate timeline. This is an easy way to make this an unpredictable character. I'm not sure which way they would go, different history and stuff like that, whilst having a similar history at the same time. However, I think I said this when we were talking about it initially, it also involves cutting out personal connections to our main characters. And I think that's a very important thing for villains, especially a villain that is Eddie Thawne. You expect him to have some personal connections there. And if he's referencing stuff that we didn't see, like, oh, Iris, you kicked me in the shin and then went married Barry. Like, that didn't happen. So, but, he's saying that happened in his timeline. It didn't happen in our one. So it's an easy way to bring Eddie in and set him up, but it also just cuts that personal connections for the most part. And number one, my most likely, most favorite one to happen, and you probably would have got this when I was talking about it initially, and that's that the season 1 Singularity transformed Eddie into Cobalt Blue. I think this just sets it up for all you need it to be. Like, that Singularity could spit Eddie out anywhere it wanted to and change him as well, whether it be physically with powers or just mentally in regards to what he's going to do, and then he gets powers elsewhere, maybe through the crystal. I would love it if a villain or the villain in the final season connected all the way back to season 1. It would feel suitable. I've already talked about how Eddie goes about it. He gets back. Maybe he is normal, but he doesn't know what's happened since he left. And he sees that Barry is now married to Iris. Iris could be pregnant. He sees that he's just been forgotten. No one remembers, or not that no one remembers him, but he's not remembered, if that makes sense. So he could walk in and Barry goes, oh my God, there's Eddie. But it's not like he's remembered. Like remembered. So yeah, I think that's the coolest option out of the ones that are actually listed in this article, and it's actually the one that I would want the most just in general. I think it just works so well. The big question is the episode count, but I think 13 episodes is more than enough. It just depends on how much is dedicated to the storyline if this is the one they go down. So yeah, I think this is perfect, to be completely honest, if you're going to do Cobalt Blue in the context of the Flash and the Arrowverse and everything like that. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on the video to show support. Let me know in the comments section down below your opinions. Which one do you like the most? If you want to rank them from least likely to most likely, feel free to as well. Very interested to see which ones people like the most. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.